Welcome back, everybody. This is going to be the second video based on what we talked about in my previous video. So if this is the first video you're watching, I suggest you go down to the comment section and check out the link for the first part of this video, because this is the second part. So here we go. We are studying ecology, and as we talked about before, we're trying to figure out all the different components of things that we need to know in order to be able to study ecology. So we're talking about life we talked about last time and some of the basic parts of life. What we're going to do today now is we have our lion back here, and we have this research group with the fishing tackle box thing we talked about last time, and we got our lion there. We're assuming they darted it and they're taking blood samples from it or whatever it is they're doing, and we can get to that later. So what we're going to do though is we need to know a little bit more about life. We're going to zoom in today, and if you look, I put a little graphic there of some cells that are inside the lion, but these are too small. We're not going to be able to see these with the naked eye, and so what we need to do is zoom in. And this is a picture taken from the spleen, actually, of a lion, and these are cells undergoing different stages of cancer, actually. So what I have on the screen over here is actually, of course, a drawing, because I want to show you the parts of it. But actually, you can do this type of thing with a microscope. You can take a tissue sample, cut really, really thin, and zoom in, and that's what this picture is here. Very, very tiny though. And so the drawing actually here, where I have the line, I'm showing you the cells, it's not accurate to size, obviously, because you need a microscope to see these cells. Some of the largest cells you can see with the naked eye, barely, but really you need a microscope to do this type of thing. So once again, all living things are made out of cells, and these are the cells, and we're zooming in so we can talk about certain parts of the cells. Now, a cell, like I said, is the basic living unit of life. Anything that is going to meet the criteria of being alive is made up of cells. Things that are not made up of cells or just part of cells aren't quite, we call those sometimes semi-living. They don't have all the functional parts. So in this case, we're talking about the lion, and it's made up of cells. So we've zoomed into the cellular level, if you will. Now, cells then are made up of smaller parts that do certain functions, and we call these parts, we call these organelles. And a cell has, maybe hundreds of different kinds of organelles, but for what we need to do to approach our ecology class, we only need to know a couple. So that's what I'm going to hit on today. So in our organelles inside the cells of the lion, we have one that is found in all cells. It's called a cell membrane, and the cell membrane helps regulate what moves in and out of the cell. This is important because it relates to homeostasis, and so the inside of the cell it has to retain the certain properties of life that we talked about before, although the outside might vary a little bit. In order for the cell to stay alive, you have to be able to control what's happening inside the cell. The cell membrane helps us do that. That's one organelle. Also inside nearly every cell, there's a couple of exceptions, and we don't need to worry about those. Inside each of those cells is a structure called the nucleus. And the nucleus you can think of as the brain of the cell, and the brain of the cell is where the DNA is. So the DNA, or the genetic material of the cell, helps control what that cell can do. Okay, so if you think about the nucleus, and you think about DNA, and you think about genes and genetics, and maybe why a lion has blue eyes or brown eyes, not that that really actually happens per se, but that is because a lion has certain characteristics just like a person does, because of the genes or the genetics, and that information is stored inside the nucleus of the cell, and we'll talk about that a little bit later also. Now, in most cells, there's a structure called a mitochondria. And actually there's many of them, and it kind of depends on the cell. Some of them have maybe hundreds of them inside a cell, depends on what the cell does. The mitochondria you can just simply think about as the powerhouse of the cell. It helps generate the energy that will run the cell and therefore the animal. Then the last organelle I'm going to mention is, we have to zoom in really close to see, there's a very, very tiny organelle scattered throughout all over the cell. They're called ribosomes. And the only thing I think we need to mention here that is significant is the ribosomes are important for making proteins. And this will make a lot more sense why we need to know that later on. But if you think about it this way, what's going to end up happening when I tell you the rest of this story is that we have information in the nucleus, and that's the genetic material that explains the code for what a cell can do. And then what ends up happening is that code is actually a information on how to build proteins. And the ribosomes then, taking the information it gets from the nucleus, build those proteins. And pretty much everything that the lion or a person or any organism has characteristic feature-wise is related to some kind of protein or a series of proteins. So that will be important as well. Okay, so we're going to stop there. It's real quick. That's a perfect start and a perfect end to the second part. And next time we will move on to a slightly different cell, and I'll see you in the next video. Hope everybody's having a good day. Talk to you soon.